Now, mountaineers have started leaving the Everest base camp, making it likely that this year's climbing season will be called off. An avalanche 8 days ago killed 16 Nepalese Sherpa guides in the worst ever accident on the mountain. It's triggered a dispute over compensation and insurance payments, with the Sherpas threatening to boycott this year's summit attempts. Simon Hughes reports.
Heading home after the deadliest disaster ever on the world's highest peak. 16 Sherpa guides died in an avalanche on Mount Everest last week. The bodies of 3 of them have yet to be recovered. Sherpas are central to the perilous and lucrative Everest climbing industry. They set routes, secure ropes and carry kit for tourists who often pay tens of thousands of pounds to try to reach the summit. But they're demanding greater protection following last week's tragedy. They want better insurance, more generous compensation for those killed and injured, and the establishment of a welfare fund. The Nepalese government has held talks with the Sherpas to try to persuade them not to boycott this year's Everest climbing season. Most climbers are scheduled to make their summit attempts in just a few weeks' time, and the dispute means work to prepare their high-altitude routes is on hold. A number of big trekking firms have now called off their trips, and it's looking increasingly unlikely that any summit attempts will be made this season.
The Sherpas know it's not safe. The government knows it's not safe. Anyone that crosses those ice falls at this time or this season are doing so at great risk to themselves as climbers and to the Sherpas.
More than 700 people have been issued with permits to climb Everest this year. Some Sherpas say they'll struggle financially if the season is officially scrapped. Stuart Hughes, BBC News.
We can now speak to Simon Lowe, who's the managing director of Jagged Globe, a mountaineering company which organises Everest exhibitions. One of their Sherpas died in the avalanche. Another 6 were injured. Simon is just back from Kathmandu and joins us now from Sheffield in the north of England. Simon, we talk about Sherpas in general terms, but obviously you have been to visit the family of one Sherpa who died. Just tell us about him, how his family are coping.
Well, he's Pasang Karma. His family are distraught. He's got 3 young children, one 14, one 8, and one very tiny one, 2.5, who clearly doesn't know what's going on. But I met Pasang Karma's widow, and she's very saddened by what's happened, of course. And
what about compensation? Because the Nepalese government, which is responsible for this, did offer a pretty low figure. They've had to boost that in recent days. How is that going?
Well, the Nepalese government, I mean, certainly the Sherpas feel very let down by the government. The government offered them, I think, $400 as an immediate payment, which clearly is derisory. There is the insurance payments, which stand slightly to one side, and they're set at about $10,000. But clearly, even together, they don't go anywhere near compensating a family for the loss of a breadwinner that will see them into the future secure with a reasonable income.
So is your company helping materially as well as, emotionally?
We are helping, which is why I went to see the family, and together with our agent in Kathmandu, we've undertaken to ensure that the children are properly educated.
What about this question of where we go from here? What's your company going to be doing for the rest of the season?
Well, we pulled off the mountain. We lost half of our Sherpa force straight away, so with Pasang Karma being killed and 5 injured, fortunately not badly, but clearly they came off the mountain back to Kathmandu. We thought we could continue. The sentiment was that everyone wanted to continue, including the remaining Sherpas on our team. But that would mean recruiting other Sherpas, and it's simply proved impossible to do.
So there had been a pretty large pool of willing people, but that sounds as though it's changing.
Well, I think in base camp, I think that the Sherpas were split down the middle. Some people wanted to continue and others didn't. And I think it's reasonable that people don't want to continue. At the end of the day, there are 3 dead Sherpas still in the icefall, and I think it's just emotionally too much to ask people to go back to work and to literally walk over the top of the fallen comrades. And I think we can't enter into that debate, really. If Sherpas don't want to do that, I think that's entirely right.
You're right. We're talking about, dead people and their families, but clearly, commercially, your company and companies like yours will be making long-term assessments about the viability of running these kind of tours, won't it?
Well, ultimately, it depends on whether people want to continue to go. I mean, I think from a safety aspect is what we need to look at it, rather than just the, financial viability. We need to think, can we do this reasonably safely into the future? What lessons are there to be learned from this accident to make sure it doesn't happen again?
And briefly, have you made any decisions?
No. I mean, a very easy decision to make would be to say, OK, let's not climb it from the Nepalese side. Let's avoid the icefall altogether, and let's go and climb it from the Tibetan side, which we have done before.
Simon Lowe from Jagged Globe, thanks very much for joining us.